Oh, there we go. Okay, there's John.
Hello. Hi, Susan. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thank you.
Good, good.
John, how you doing?
You. Um,
I'm sorry I missed that, John. How are you doing?
doing well, I think. I hope.
Good, good. I don't know if you intended or not, but we cannot see you. All we see is your name on the screen.
Okay, I'm having some problems here. I'm working on it now, so let's see
Okay.
what.
No problem. No problem.
No, I said it. I was just waiting till I got the other up. We can take that off. There we go.
Hey, Karen, how are you?
I'm well. And yourself?
That should
I
be
am
somewhere
great.
where I
Thank
can
you.
change that.
There you are, John. We can see you now.
Okay, good.
Awesome. Good to see your face.
You got to do it. Yeah, that's
Hey,
fine.
Ed.
Hey, y'all.
Okay, thank you.
Camille. This is always such a test for me. Trying to remember people's names and faces.
Yes, and
How are you?
I'm fine. I'm on the way to the church, so I've got everything muted. So
Okay.
I'll become visible in about 10 minutes. So
No worries. No worries at all.
all right, thanks.
Sure. For 2 more minutes. Good morning, David Rollins.
Good morning.
Oh, you sound like you're driving.
I'm sitting in a parking lot. I did three Zooms via hotel this morning, but I have a meeting at 1, but didn't want to miss this meeting. So
Awesome. Glad you're here. Good morning, ma'am. How are you? Barnes, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Valerie?
I'm good. Thank you. Thank you. Hey, Jim, how's it going?
Very good. Yes.
Good. Thanks for being with us.
Our pleasure.
If it's all right, we're going to give it a couple more minutes just to make sure we get as many folks as possible. We're already recording. Some folks have already asked for the recording of our time, so that's a good sign. Is Tim joining us this morning as well?
Yeah, I'm on the call.
Oh, hey, there you are. You just popped up on my screen. Super. Glad you're here. Thank you for being here. If you don't mind, I'd like to give it 1 more minute to make sure. Thank you. This wasn't necessarily an agreed upon date. It was a date that we just picked. So we get who we get, but I know that folks have been watching the recordings of our previous meetings. So it's encouraging one way or the other. Everyone is so quiet today.
I had some texts this morning with Hoover, and he indicated he would be here unless I misunderstood him. So
Yeah, I heard from him as well. So here we go. Now we got some more folks. Hey, Milana, how's it going?
Great.
Glad you're here. Thanks. Well, why don't we open with a word of prayer? Ed, would you be willing?
Yes, ma'am. Let's go to God in prayer. Heavenly Father, your mercies are new every morning, and we give you thanks for that. We thank you for not giving up on us. We thank you for being with us in the middle of whatever we are doing. And we ask you now to bless us as we gather for this particular purpose. Let us hear and understand and seek your wisdom and guidance for the work that we are trying to do. And let us know what you would have us do so that we might walk in it and bring glory to you. May all our words and conversations be presentable to you, O Lord, and let us all find joy in whatever part of the journey we are on. For it's in Jesus' name that we ask it. Amen.
Amen.
Thanks so much, Ed. I appreciate that. For the benefit of our guests, how about we go around and introduce ourselves real quickly, your name and where it is you live and or serve, and the presbytery that you are a member of, okay? Let's start with Susan.
I'm Susan Henley. I'm the Office Administrator of Westminster Presbyterian Church in Rome, Georgia, and that is Cherokee Presbytery.
Thanks, Susan. John Davis.
Yeah, John Davis. I'm the pastor at Spring Lake Presbyterian Church in Sebring, Florida, the home of the Sebring racetrack. I'm with the Central Florida Presbytery.
Wonderful. Thanks, John. Karen.
I'm Karen Nesmith. I'm a retired interim pastor, and I'm here representing Tampa Bay Presbytery.
Thank you. Ed.
I'm Ed Reese, the transitional general presbyter of Northeast Georgia Presbytery, which is exactly what the name says it is.
Not a stretch. Thanks. Milana.
Milana Scruggs, I'm the general presbyter for Peace River Presbytery, which is Southwest Florida.
Thanks. Tom.
Yes, I'm Tom Sharon, and I'm here on behalf of New Harmony Presbytery in Florence, South Carolina.
Awesome. Thanks, Tom. Camille is driving.
I am a pastor in the Cherokee Presbytery, pastor of a small church, Silver Creek, up in the north, I guess the southwest side of Rome, Georgia.
Thanks, Camille. David Rollins.
A Presbytery of St. Augustine, currently sitting in the parking lot in Ocala, Florida. Good to be with y'all.
Thanks, David. Andy Schlupner. He may just be listening. Okay, he's walked away. Hoover, would you introduce yourself, please, sir?
Yes, Hoover Haney, Central Florida Presbytery.
Thank you. I can tell you that Andy Schlupner serves. Oh, there he is. Andy, tell us about you.
Hey, sorry, it just took me a minute to find the unmute button on mobile. Yeah, I'm Andy Schlupner. I'm the Director of Finance and Property for the Presbytery of Greater Atlanta. I'm also the Treasurer for the Synod.
Thanks, Andy. So you've met us. Would you please, the folks from the insurance board, please introduce yourselves to us?
Sure. We are so grateful to be here and meeting all of you and reconnecting with some of you that we have talked to before. I'm Farnaz Ansari. I'm the Vice President of Marketing and Sales and have had the pleasure of working at Insurance Board for 9 years. With that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Jim Howard.
Hi, I'm Jim Howard. I'm the Vice President of Operations. I oversee underwriting and loss control, and I just celebrated my 4th anniversary with Insurance Board yesterday.
And I'm Tim Harris. I'm President and CEO of Insurance Board. I've been with the Insurance Board, I think, coming up on 12 years, and in the industry for about 35.
Thank you so much. We had a great conversation, several weeks ago now. I admittedly have slept since then. It's my understanding, though, that you're going to tell us all about the insurance board and, if I recall correctly, going to also tell us what information we can provide to you to help you help us. I hope I got that right. And I'm just going to turn it over to y'all.
Sounds good. Yes. Again, thank you so much for the opportunity to connect today. We put a few slides together. We will go through those quickly, and then we will kind of open up to some questions and kind of go over some things that hopefully your presbyteries and synod will find helpful. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And let me know if you see it. Great, thank you. So I will be going through a few slides talking about insurance board and our history and who we are, and then I will hand it over to my colleague at Place and how we can assist you and your ministries and presbytery and synod. And so a little bit about our background. Many of you are familiar with insurance organization.
She keeps
And that
freezing,
has been around for over 40 years now.
Just a minute? I'd like to interrupt you for just a minute. She's frozen again.
Yeah, you're glitching.
Yeah.
I am glitching. Okay.
Pretty seriously.
Oh, that's not good. Okay, is it better? I'm trying to see if I stop my video, if you can still see my screen and hear me.
We can hear you, sure. We'll let you know if you start glitching again. Thanks.
Sounds great. Thank you. I stopped the video. Sometimes that eats up a lot of the Wi-Fi service, but let me know. I can always hand it over to Jim if he has better Wi-Fi going on today. We have a little bit of wind, I think, outside and clouds are rolling in, so probably it's impacting the Wi-Fi service. So about 40 years ago, the insurance environment was very similar to what we're faced with today. It was very difficult for churches to go out there and obtain great coverage at good pricing. And Insurance Board was founded by thoughtful leaders of United Church of Christ. They connected with some of their members that were insurance experts and created a program that would focus on providing the appropriate coverages and products and services for churches. So we started with United Church of Christ, and then over the years, we have added additional denominations that are in a partnership with United Church of Christ. So Christian Church Disciples of Christ joined us in 1999. Christian Church Disciples of Christ and UCC are in full communion. Presbyterian Church USA, we have been fortunate to serve ministries since 2009. We insure about 1,500 or so PCUSA ministries as of today. We also welcomed Alliance of Baptists in 2016, which is a small denomination. They have maybe 120 or so ministries within that denomination. And in 2018, we welcomed ELCA and RCA ministries to the program as well. And a little bit more about our history. We are, as I mentioned, we only serve the ecumenical partners of United Church of Christ. We are a nonprofit organization. We have a captive that is based out of Hawaii, And we have been in good standing with the Hawaii Department of Insurance since our inception. I also wanted to mention that we are a program of covenant. Our mission statement states to connect faith-based institutions to comprehensive and customized risk and insurance management solutions anchored in shared trust and sacred responsibility. So we work closely with our insureds and churches on managing risk and making sure that they are remaining insurable and they have healthy congregations that can focus on ministry and carry on. So I'm going to turn it over to Jim, who will tell us a little bit about what's going on in the environment that is impacting pricing for churches.
Thanks, Farnaz. Appreciate that. Am I okay? Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Just any questions based on the history of IB from anybody? Okay. As you know, insurance rates, many of you have seen rates going up and up and up year after year after year after year. And what's causing that? Well, obviously, lots of things are causing that across the entire industry. Obviously, we've seen in Florida, we've seen hurricanes, and not only in Florida, they've come up and come through the areas and come through, South Carolina, North Carolina, and things like that. Very different looks of what we've seen. We've been lucky this year so far. Several of the hurricanes have gone up and taken a sharp right for us, which was very helpful. And some of your churches may have still been affected a little bit by those along the coast as well. But we're just seeing lots more windstorms than that. Next slide. And also what's causing after COVID, we also saw prices, materials, trying to get material into places and that, and costs are going through the roof. Cost of, employees and everything is going up. So we've seen lots of cost changes there in our supply chain in that. Next slide.
Hey, Jim.
Yeah, sure.
Should we ask questions or should we just wait until the presentation is over?
Please interrupt me. I get to talking, and so please yell at me and tell me to be quiet and ask questions. It's much more important to hear what you want. There's no doubt about
So question is the math related to Florida. Have we had a ton of churches, or do you insure a bunch of churches that actually got hit in Florida, or are we just talking rates generally now?
This is just overall rates generally. We've been we've been pretty lucky in Florida, I should say. The word luck is never good to say in insurance, but we've been very fortunate in Florida.
Yeah.
We do have a lot of churches insured in Florida with UCC and with the presbyteries and we've been very fortunate with a lot of our claims that have happened.
Yeah.
So. Yeah.
That's what I thought. I think we did some actuarial analysis, and there's very few in our case, Presbyterian churches in Central Florida that had any wind damage at all. So the picture sometimes scares you a little bit.
It does.
But
Yes.
we've had very limited and just, okay. You're talking the broader picture of
right. Yeah, I'm looking at the entire, just as I'm starting as the insurance industry as a whole. Then we'll kind of narrow it down to what the IB is seen, and then we'll narrow it down to the Mid-Atlantic Synod is what we'll kind of do. So obviously flooding. Yeah, go ahead, Tim.
Let me just jump in there. With regard to Presbyterian churches, I think we've had a limited number of Presbyterian churches that have been impacted by hurricanes, but I would tell you, over our entire book in Florida, I mean, we've certainly had our share of hurricane claims, going back to Harvey, Irma, Maria, but also Ian. When you look at Ian that came through, that was a pretty consequential hurricane for us. Helene and Milton last year, fairly consequential, but relative to Presbyterian churches,
most of that's flood
activity
damage, right, Tim? I mean, so if you think about it,
Helene,
that was a flood.
Helene
We're not talking windstorm.
Helene was flood. Irma was mostly a wind event, and so was Milton.
Mm-hmm.
And Ian as well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Thanks, Tim. Appreciate that. Yeah, and some of those slides, we'll mention those as we come through. Flooding has been an issue for us in certain areas, and of course, we've had fires. Wildfires have hit us in other states. Just kind of a general, just not us, but affecting everybody. The hurricane that just hit Jamaica, is challenging for a lot of our reinsurance carriers who now insure not only programs in the United States, but outside of that. So as Tim had just mentioned, some of the hurricanes from Harvey and Irma and Maria going back. And if you kind of look, 2020 was one of the most active hurricane seasons on record. But if you go down to a little farther down, you see the 2020 Midwest derecho in Iowa that happened, which was a large windstorm there. We actually paid more damage in that claim than we did in the hurricanes in 2020. So it just kind of shows you how things are, you can't just say one area is catastrophic like Florida. It's everywhere. Every area, every place is different. And then in 2021, we had the Texas freeze down in, the Texas area where we saw that. Next slide. Then we came right back in 2022, right around Christmas time. We had another huge winter storm, which affected more than just, one area like the Texas did. That we actually paid claims out in 36 different states where we paid claims and everything. So, and then as Tim said, Ian hit in 2022. We had, the flooding that happened in Vermont. And then we had a big hailstorm in Texas and $2.2 million in damages on roofs and that. 2023, we had a church in Lahaina, Hawaii. We lost a church in that fire. And then Tim just mentioned the Milton, Helene hurricanes that came through, obviously came up and, the fact that we had hurricane damage in Asheville, North Carolina, that's just hard to even imagine, 20 years ago. And then again, this spring, this in January, we just had another Los Angeles fire because of the Altadena fire. So what we're trying to say is this is just happening globally, and across the entire world. I mean, it's very different where we're at in that. If you kind of look at, we look at claims at over $1 billion when you look at the actual payout in that. In 2023, there were 28 events. In 2024, there were 27 events. And if you go to the next slide, you can kind of just see this is from 2023, I believe. It just shows you how spread out these events are. They're all over the place. It's not just in one local area anymore. You've got fires in Hawaii.
Insurance pool the entire United States, or you?
Pardon me. You went mute.
You muted yourself, Bob.
Oh, sorry, Jim. Is the insurance pool segmented to Florida only, or are you covering it actuarially across the entire country?
Yeah. We look at the entire country. We have churches in all 50 states. Wow. So we look at everything across the entire country, and we're not isolating it to Florida.
Yeah. Cool.
And when we look at the overall program, Florida hasn't really hurt us as bad as some of these other storms have hurt us.
Yeah, looking at the map, it looks like the Midwest is been a little bit rougher on insurance board.
There's lots of, and this isn't just insurance board. This is industry wide. This is not just us. So this is what's happening out there, and what that does is.
I think part of the challenge is when we go out and buy reinsurance, the heaviest part of our pricing is going to be in any cat exposed areas. So when you look at states like Florida, Texas, California, those are the states that actually carry the biggest rate load when we're looking at our entire portfolio relative to cost. We try to limit our exposure in Florida to about 4% of our overall total insured values, our total book. Yep. So we've as Jim has mentioned, we've managed to have pretty decent experience in Florida. That's why we continue to write churches in Florida, where others may not, and we will continue to do that.
Oh, Southeast looks pretty good too on that map. So, I mean, I think most of us are from the Southeast. So I always thought that was the worst. So it's great.
So if you go down a couple of slides, I just kind of looked at what our claims look like in the South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida area for IB claims over the past 10 years. Our average property claim has been running about $48,000. Our average liability claim has been running about $21,000. And obviously wind and hail are the number one problems with the property. You get the hail, you get the tornadoes and everything. water damage, even in the South, you've got water coming in through penetration from flooding, or it might be from what rain or whatever, or lack of maintenance. Also burst pipe, things like that all happen there. And water claims are, those are some of our bigger accounts. You can kind of see hurricanes, how that's affected us over the past 10 years, because we did have some big hurricanes in 10 years. And small fires, and then other things that would happen. On the liability side, slips and falls are by far the biggest exposure that we have, in the claims where people are falling and slipping. We do have, discrimination. We do have some professional liability claims, and we have some harassments, and that adds up to about 26%, and then smaller claims. We have seen crime start to edge up over the last few years, a little bit more. We're seeing more and more embezzlements and things like that happening where we may not have seen that 15 years ago. And so, but that's just kind of gives you a notable of what we see from IB as far as the churches that we insure in those 3 states. So thought that'd be interesting for you. Any questions on that?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if you have any idea about how many churches you insure in Florida, because
yes,
that's so small compared to what we had with Ian and Helene and Milton in Southwest Florida.
Go to slide 25 if you would, real quick, for Hernaz. Currently, the insurance board, we have, across the entire country, we have like 22 synods and 36 UCC conferences. We actually insure 177 churches in the South Atlantic Synod. Out of the potential, what the last report I saw was about 833 churches are total in that synod, and we insure 21% of those currently. If you look in the 3 states, South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida as a whole, we insure 375 churches in all 3 states. And we insure, that number is really up to 4,400 now nationwide is what we insure in all 50 states. Premiums range from $1,600 to over $105,000. That's all depending on size of the church and different things like that. So just does that help answer your question, Milana?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. All right. Any questions else on that? Just kind of looking forward, because what you're here to do is what can IB do for you compared to what competitors in that. What we've seen over the past, several years is our competitors have been canceling policies for various reasons. Maybe their reinsurance people told them they needed to back off on certain areas. And we see that by location. They'll come in and say, okay, we're no longer going to write business in this section of that. Same thing with age of buildings. A lot of times a church gets, the building gets too old and they automatically will cancel you because the building is too old. And, obviously a lot of things happen with carriers, or you turn in a claim and the next thing you know, they cancel you and they don't really give you a reason other than that. A lot of restriction of coverages, which we've seen, a lot of increased premiums, which we already mentioned. Maybe not willing to provide quotes for new prospects. And then a lot of times, you may have a group talk to you and say, oh, we're part of this large, insurance carrier or brokerage firm where we're across the entire country and we have people everywhere. But it depends on the representatives that you're talked to. Because Tim has worked with a large firm, and I've worked with a large firm where we have, 10,000 employees, and you say, oh, we've got all these employees. But in reality, the 4 or 5 people that you're actually talking to, those are the ones that are actually handling your account. And they could be in Chicago, or they could be in St. Louis or New York, or wherever they might be. If you go to the next slide, one of the differences with the insurance board is we have agencies assigned to each territory. For instance, in South Carolina, we have 2 agencies. In Georgia, we have 2 agencies. In Florida, we have 2 agencies. And those are boots on the ground where the individuals that support the IB can be out there and talk to you and be at the board meetings, whatever you might need to have to talk to you about insurance and that. We've been very good over the last 5 years since COVID's hit that we try to give competitive quotes to all new business prospects. When a new prospect comes to IB, our underwriters will work with the agent and the local church to find a way to put together a comparison for you. Unless we get a picture of the house or the church is literally falling over, which sometimes we do get a submission in that says as that happens. And sometimes we can't insure the building because of that, but we'll still talk to them about maybe liability. And then once they get the building repaired, we can help them out. We currently, a lot of carriers will say winds excluded or hurricanes excluded, but you can buy a separate policy for that. Whereas we include that in our program as for wind and hurricane coverage, and hail, obviously. And we really work with our churches to keep them insured with the insurance board. We always kind of, make a little comment that says, you have to really be not willing to work with us for us to cancel you. We will do everything we can to work with you and keep you insured with the insurance board. We offer loss control assistance to help mitigate claims. We'll, work, if you've had a storm or if you've had a hurricane or something, or you had some damage to your building, our loss control people will kind of work with you to say, okay, here's what you need to do to kind of bring that back up to place. And we'll do everything we can to support you on that. And then we always try to provide options as well, to help fit the church board, whether that's, looking at, reducing the liability coverage or raising a deductible or something. We'll find some ways to try to help make the competitive as possible, our pricing on that. So that's just kind of a real quick overview. And I know I just kind of want to throw some things out there. I'm sure that you've got questions that you would like to ask us. So.
Jim, you mentioned deductibles. So if I saw right on your claim, it was average claims were 48,000 over those 22 churches.
Mm-hmm.
What's the average deductible in Florida? Because the problem we have, unfortunately, is our deductible, let's say, is 250,000. So we'd never put a claim in for 48,000 because we couldn't, because we just have to pay that because of the deductible. Deductible becomes an issue when it comes to wind because of the math indifference, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you have
Right.
a bunch of small claims, they never get posted to the insurance company because deductibles are so high in Florida, or in the Southeast.
Yeah. And obviously there are separate deductibles based on exposures and that. Most of our churches on what we call your everyday, claims, where you might have some wind damage or something, that's $5,000 or $10,000 or whatever, based on the size of the building. There is higher deductibles on coastal locations for hurricanes and that. Up to 2 to 5% of the values of the buildings, which is kind of comparable with most carriers that we look at. But that's the average amount that we paid out, not the total claim. So that's kind of, maybe that helps you a little bit.
So in our case, if we got hit with a bad hurricane, again, or a bad wind event, more than likely the 48,000 would have been over my $250,000
Sure.
deductible that the church already paid before the insurance company gave us an additional 48.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So average deductible on an average church across the footprint, the deductible, you probably have that math. I'm sure Tim has it somewhere, but the average deductible has got to be to keep the costs down, because we're really trying to focus on cost and then benefit, right? Cost, right? So keeping the cost down, what's happened over the last couple of years, churches bump their deductibles up. And if my church doesn't happen to have 250 just sitting there in its checking account, that 48,000 doesn't matter to us. Maybe same across the footprint. I don't know in some of the South.
Well, and we're looking at three states here, not just Florida. We're not. I didn't.
So if we say South Carolina, then if you just use an average deductible there, or an average deductible in Georgia or an average deductible in Texas. Just trying to understand the value proposition of actually having wind insurance, because in most cases you don't even need wind insurance. And will you still write the policy if we don't take wind with you?
We do. Go ahead, Tim. Yeah.
Yeah, you're asking if we would write a policy excluding wind. Jim, are we doing that at all? Have we gotten a lot of requests for that? Jim?
Did I just go out, or was that you, Tim? I'm sorry.
Yeah. Do we have a lot of policies that request coverage without wind? Can you hear
Very
me?
few. Yeah, very
Yeah.
few. Sorry, I think I cut out there for a second. I apologize. So, most of the churches in the coastal areas want the wind coverage, so we very seldom will exclude it. So, yeah.
You could
We
write
are.
it though, is what you're saying.
Yes.
Yes, correct. And we are looking at options. Actually, we had a couple of emails we exchanged today about providing deductible buy down opportunities for churches. And I know we do today. We use outside companies to help us with deductible buy downs. We're actually looking at embedding that into our program so that we can offer that routinely to folks that are in especially cat exposed areas where they have a percentage deductible. So that is an active conversation we're having.
And we would look at that, buying it down to 25,000, where, like you said, Bob, you may have a $200,000 deductible or something with the percentage. But so those are options that we'll be offering after the first of the year. So. Because the one thing we try to do is we listen to our churches and we try to come up with solutions to help them to stay insured and protect their buildings as best we can. That's one of the nice things about being in a program like the insurance board, where we're always working for the church. Our mission is to help the church, do what they do best on Sunday mornings, and make sure they've got a place to operate. So those are things.
Hopefully all week long too, Joe.
Yes, no doubt. So yeah. So
I have a question.
Sure.
Go ahead, Karen.
This may seem a strange one, but when you are considering insurance for a church or churches in a particular area, do you limit the number of churches in a particular area, given the risk that there might be to the company if there were a big hurricane? Pardon?
We always look at that when we're looking at different areas. That's never a factor to say no. Just like Tim said, we try to keep our overall growth of our entire program at 4% in Florida. And I think we're at 3.4%, I think, is our percentage right now. So we actually have, quite a bit of room for growth in Florida. But we will look at individual churches in cities and areas and look at that. We'll do everything we can to still offer a price. It may have to be a higher deductible or something to do that if we're tight in the area. But so far we've not had to say no to anybody yet, and for that very reason. So.
But what we do across our portfolio, because obviously we have more than just the PCUSA in the program. So, we could have a PCUSA church right across the street from a UCC church that we're insuring. So we do look at churches down to the zip code just to make sure that our concentration of risk is not too intense in any given area. But we review that regularly. At this point, we have 4,500 across the country. So we usually have a pretty good spread of risk geographically.
Thank you.
We work with a company that kind of helps us identify, exposures where we're at, and even for wildfires, just for an example. I know that's the other side of the country, but we actually identify where that's at, so we can apply a proper pricing on that and still be able to quote that for you. So. To say, so we can always say yes.
Yes. Maybe I'm not understanding exactly. But if we're talking about trying to get half of our churches in the presbytery to have a group insurance policy kind of thing, I mean, for us, we're talking about 18 churches. In Ian, at least half of our churches had major damage.
Mm-hmm.
So are we talking about a real possibility of group coverage here, or are we saying, you would only take 6 or 7 churches out of Southwest Florida because of the risk? So, I'm just trying to get a feel for what.
No, I appreciate the question. No, we're not restricted to how, if you wanted to do a group program and it was in Florida, we're certainly not restricted in terms of our concentration. I mean, again, those 18 churches, I'm assuming, aren't, right next to each other. They're going to be spread out. They may be in the same county, There's going to be some geographic spread there. And again, I think as long as our overall book is balancing out the exposure that we have in Florida, we're in good shape. And that's what, when we go out to the marketplace to negotiate our reinsurance, what we have to pay for those catastrophic risks, they want to see where our concentrations of churches are. And as long as we have pretty good geographic spread, you're always going to have situations where a hurricane comes through Florida and you've got other states that are going to have to subsidize the losses that we have in Florida. It works the same way for churches that are damaged in other places where Florida is sometimes subsidizing other states. So that's the way the insurance mechanism works. But no, we're not restricted. If we had 18 churches in Florida that wanted to come together to buy insurance more effectively, we're absolutely able to do that.
Mhm. Yep.
So would
Oh,
it be, but would it be helpful to have a larger group or more groups?
It really depends. We'd be open to looking at it however you'd want to kind of slice it. Obviously, the more for us, the better. It's more cost effective for us to do larger group. The larger the group, the more economies of scale there are in terms of designing a program, pricing it, lower expenses versus having to write individual knock on individual doors to quote churches. So there are some economies there, certainly the larger the size.
Mhm.
Well, like we have 63 churches in Central Florida, and you got 16 here, and all of a sudden you start to get to that math, Tim, that you better sell some insurance in North Dakota quickly from churches to offset your Florida risk or your South Carolina risk because it's high. North Carolina may not be as high, but we saw what happened. So
Absolutely. And again, we look at that overall mix relative to our entire portfolio, to kind of keep that number manageable. And again, that's why we buy reinsurance. We have a big situation that comes through Florida and it affects a lot of churches. We have vertical insurance protection to help us with that. Fortunately, I'm, I will be speaking at mid council next week. I look over the data all the time. My second occupation is meteorologist. But the incidence of storms and the size and the strength of storms has certainly increased over the years. I look at Melissa that didn't even make U.S. landfall, but you look at some of the parametric characteristics of Melissa, just absolutely phenomenal. Category 5. I think this is only the second time in the history of recording hurricanes that we've had 3 Cat 5s in one Atlantic hurricane season, believe it or not. And because it didn't hit the U.S., people are probably not really paying that much attention. But when you look at the intensity of Melissa going from a Cat 1 to a Cat 3, Cat 5, in a limited period of time, like 24 to 48 hours, those are records that it's just amazing that every time we see these storms, they continue to get stronger and more ferocious. So it's not, beyond the realm of possibility that we have, a significant event that comes through and does a reasonable amount of damage in Florida. But again, that's why we kind of manage how much exposure we have there, and that's what we buy our reinsurance for.
Tim, you mentioned parametric insurance. Do you have a separate parametric product? Because that product itself specifically would be very good for Florida because you're right. Mathematically, it really comes to wind speed under that parametric coverage and umbrella. And if you happen to be in a place where you don't have those huge wind speeds, then parametric insurance as a separate piece of wind insurance, if you have that market, that's a great idea for Florida, South Carolina, Georgia border, the South Atlantic, specifically taking it as parametric insurance as opposed to overall wind coverage. Is that what you're talking about? Because the other folks we talked to, I don't think talked about parametric. And when you use that, that's new data collection technology. That's
Yeah,
some cool stuff right there.
it is. It is. We don't offer that. And part of the reason is, you really need a pretty good size of risk in order to be able to do parametric insurance. I mean, the minimum, spend that you have to,
It's pretty
put
high.
in
Okay.
is pretty high. So you'd have to have, if you were a manufacturer and you had a number of locations in Florida, and you
You'd
said
be
if you had a Cat 5 come through and had wind speeds of 150 and it hit right here, you're absolutely right.
okay.
It's a great product for that. And there are a lot of parametric triggers that were triggered when Melissa came through
Mhm.
Jamaica for
Mhm.
that very reason.
Okay.
But we'd need a big
Probably
block
not
of.
for us as a church group,
No,
correct?
no. Yeah, we've kind of looked that over the last couple of years trying to figure it out. And it's just, we're so spread out that we're doing everything we can the right way. And Tim and I just came back from London talking with the property reinsurers last week. And, the whole idea of this, taking our deductible that we offer and finding a way to buy that down for you seems like the logical way to kind of help these churches out and how to help fund those deductibles, and makes IB stay profitable, which we need to do to be able to stay in business. But it also lets the churches find a way to buy that deductible down so they can afford to keep wind coverage in their churches as well. So,
Can I ask about that buy down? How does that work? I've not heard that term before. So
okay, sure. Let's say you've got a $1 million building, okay, and in Florida right now you may have and you're on the coast, so you have a 5% wind hail deductible, which says so you have a $50,000 deductible if a hurricane comes in and hits your church. We would give you the opportunity to buy that from 50,000, buy a small premium down to $25,000 to help that out. So that's kind of how that would work. So it kind of helps set up. So if you have a much bigger church, that deductible, as Bob was saying, goes maybe $250,000 deductible based on your building, and we give you the opportunity to buy that down to $225,000 if you want. We've got a whole process now to do that. So
do you buy that down at the beginning, or do you buy that down when the wind has come?
unfortunately, you got to have it in place before the wind hits. So yes.
Thank you.
So if I remember correctly, part of what you were going to bring to us today is sort of a list of information, tell us what we need to gather in our own areas to help you help us even more. Do you have ideas for us of what kind of information would be helpful for us to gather?
We have a shortened application that gives us some of the basic information, but it wouldn't be enough to give an actual proposal to each church, but it would give us an overview to see what, if you've got 800 churches and we got 400, responses back, we could look at that and say, okay, we'd be able to do it at this kind of a rate. We'd still have to go in and individually quote those and look at those on an individual basis and get that. But that's one thing that we could do. We tried that in another synod, but we ended up only getting about 7% response. So it didn't really help us at all. I mean, you got to, the only way to make, insurance works on large numbers, a law of large numbers. So the larger the numbers, the more accurate we can kind of look at an area in that. So that's one idea, The other is to just call our local agents and have them give you a quote, and we can do it that way as well too. So that's.
Yeah, I mean, we can send you a list of some basic information that we would need to kind of give you a sense for how we would price it, what that might look like for you, et cetera. I mean, we do that all the time. I mean, as Jim was mentioning, I mean, obviously, in order to bind that up and make it formal, we need to get in and get more information. But just from the standpoint of giving you some ideas of how we could structure something, yeah, we can provide a list of some basic things that we would need, where the church is located, what the total insured values are, your average Sunday worship, some things like that would get us, well on our way to being able to give you a reasonable idea of what we could do for the group.
That would be helpful. I mean, that would at least be a start. Don't y'all think? And then we could probably by presbytery begin to work. I don't anticipate like as you said, synod wide, getting that big of a response, but at least by presbytery for those who are represented here, that might be the way to go. So if you would share that with me, I can get it out to the whole group, and we can begin to take a look at that.
Can you give us the names of the 3 agents you work with in Florida?
Yes, so they're divided up by presbytery, but we will provide you that information. Valerie, I will also send you this slide deck from today, just in case if anybody wants to reference it. Another way we have approached it, I mean, we'll provide you a list of basic information we need to kind of get the ball rolling. But if the individual presbyteries are interested in a separate call just for their presbytery churches, we can get your ministries on a call, bring the agent in, make an introduction to the agent, talk a little bit about insurance board, and then tell the churches a little bit about our resources too. As many of you know, insurance board is very big on providing risk management resources. They're available to our insurers. Most of our resources are also available to your PCUSA churches, even if they're not insured by us. So we can kind of tell them a little bit about products and services we have out there, some of the risk management services that they have access to, they can use now, make an introduction to the agent, and kind of help that process moving. So if any of your presbyteries are interested, my contact information will be in this slide deck. Feel free to reach out and we can set up meetings, that way as well. Or if there's a larger audience of churches that are interested to come and attend a call under the Synod, we can always do that as well, Valerie.
Okay, thanks.
Could I ask a question about
Sure.
information you collect as you're considering insuring? Do you look at previous claims?
Yes.
Yes.
I figured, but
Yeah, that's it kind of tells the story.
There's our problem. Irma, Ian, Helene, Milton.
Well, and that's a great point, great question. We have to look at the loss history, and really what we're looking for is maybe trends or problems. Again, we're in the business to cover claims, right? So it's not disqualifying if you've had a couple of claims, especially, I mean, you can't help having a hurricane claim. I mean, you can't control the weather. Those aren't the things we're really looking for. We're looking for other types of maybe repetitive issues. You've had water intrusion because you have deferred maintenance at your facility. You've had several pipe bursts, or those types of things, which are, things that may indicate that there might be some, maintenance concerns with the property. And even then, it's not disqualifying. It just means that we have to have some more conversation. We have to have a conversation about water sensors or other risk mitigation techniques that we could use to prevent further damage. So yeah, we ask for it, but again, we're an extension of the ministry of the church. We're always looking for the yes. Sometimes we have to say no, but the goal is really to identify if there are any repetitive types of issues that we want to avoid, obviously, going forward.
Thank you.
I have a question in it's I guess kind of a risk question. Churches are in the business of doing some risky business. So we were informed when I was doing an interim at Westminster, we were asked to be a warming shelter during a season of cold, and the individual we talked to, because of previous risks, previous claims, not for that particular, but we'd had a big water claim because of a frozen pipes Christmas Eve. But anyway, we were told that to serve as a warming shelter would put us at risk of losing the policy. And yet this is the kind of business that churches ought to be in. Just kind of, I don't know how to ask a more specific question than that.
I think you asked it quite well, actually. And we understand it. We have churches all over that do warming centers and that all the time. We just always like to make sure they are doing things the proper way to, keep everybody safe, keep the building safe and everything. And that's where our loss control team can come in and help with that and kind of help you make sure you're doing it properly.
So you're saying it would be more palatable if we were to engage in that after having connected with your risk assessment team.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay, that's helpful. Yeah. Thank you.
Let ask a quick question about preventive maintenance. Certainly in our Presbyterian in Florence, South Carolina, and the surrounding areas, several of our churches are guilty of deferred maintenance. And that how, I know at John Calvin, we're catching up as fast as we can. We're very fortunate to have a couple of large benefactors to assist us. But when you're dealing with a church, in our case, is 60 years old, let's say, a little bit older, how can we deal with the insurance board? How can we document that we are doing preventive maintenance as compared to having a claim and you come in and you say it's because you did not do preventive maintenance? Does that make sense? I mean, in other words, we deal with stuff when we find it, but we may not have found it all. And I was curious on what is your approach to that?
Sure. We do a couple of things. First of all, whatever actions you're already taking place right now is always helpful for us to know. We have an organization where we can actually send out and walk through the building with a representative from there, and you'll get back a report that says, here's what we found, here's what we said, here's what you may want to work on, and then our loss control team will work with the church and say, we understand you've got 5 things that they recommend you work on. What can be done immediately? What can be done in the next 6 months? What can be done in a year? And we just look for a time management. What type of action plan do you have? Realizing you can't do it all at once. It's going to take you time to get this done. And we understand it's going to be financially expensive sometimes to do things. And we're actually working with a couple of organizations to find ways that maybe they can help provide a loan or something to that church to help them to get that work done. So so we try to do things, and then even on a more immediate thing, we have a system where a representative from the church can just get downloaded onto his phone or her phone or whoever, and they can walk around and take pictures and show it, and our underwriters and our loss control team will see that immediately, and we can help out with that too. So those are just some of the things we try to do to be proactive to help you with that. So.
Okay, well, that's good. I have one other question. We, like every church, we allow certain advocacy groups come in and use our facility. And we have some groups that certainly are used to giving certificates of insurance, was not a problem. But we have our present insurer. We originally talked to them about a group coming in to use our facility. And it was a united group of various addiction recovery groups, various cocaine, AA, that type of thing. And they originally told us that they, just so if we had the necessary paperwork where they assumed liability, the risk, they were okay. So, but shortly 4 months thereafter, then they changed their tune and said, nope. So that's just a piece of paper. We now require certificates of insurance. So how do y'all deal with that? We had to ask that big group to leave because some of them were not used to getting certificates of insurance, but they had signed the necessary paperwork saying they assumed liability. So does that question make sense? I mean,
Yes, the question makes sense. We have a couple of ways to deal with that, and it's an important question because churches oftentimes are lending their space out to other organizations as part of the mission of the church, right? And that's important. But there are liability considerations. There's no question. I can rattle off a handful of claims that we've had because of anonymous groups, for example, using the facility or other outside groups on church property where people have been injured, coming or leaving, inadvertently starting a fire in the kitchen when they're using the kitchen facilities. There are just any host of those types of things. We have a product that's called a tenants and users liability insurance policy, which we can offer. It's generally not that expensive. It would also insulate the church from the the liability that comes along with the organization who is using the facility. But indemnification language, to the extent that we can get certificates, or you can have a facility use agreement, which requires the organization to provide some type of insurance. That's the first line of defense. But beyond that, we have the opportunity to offer a product that provides a little bit of coverage that would be able to assist. So, Farnaz, do you have something?
I just shared
Shared that.
Tulip, a link to Tulip, which is a product that Tim was alluding to in the chat, so you can access that. It is on our website. The other thing I wanted to mention, Tom, but New Harmony, if your churches are making improvements, connect with Steve Pardue, who's your agent, and I know you know Steve pretty well, and he can report it to underwriting. So, we know what that church is doing. And, as Jim mentioned, there are other services that our loss control department can offer to kind of help churches realize what, maintenance issues they should be handling.
Understand. Thank you.
And substantive, Tom, if your church has made some substantive changes or improvements to the property, and in some cases that can result in a reduction in your insurance premium.
Yeah.
So, all those conversations are always critically important.
Okay. Thank you.
So
Tim,
I know this is a general, a really open question, but can you give us some idea about how the Tulip policies price out? I see you've got one-time events and recurring events.
Correct. So some of the one-time events, they're as inexpensive as $100. So the ones that are reoccurring events can be a few $100s, but the single events, if they're smaller, and we can get you pricing for these pretty quickly. The application process, once you submit it, it just takes a couple days for us to be able to turn it around and provide you pricing. But I would say the least inexpensive policy I have seen is about $100.
Thank you.
So this is a great question and great dialogue. So we have a similar situation in our group. So if you don't have a use agreement, and if you don't have a insurance certificate, what you're saying and giving us some wisdom is that we should have a Tulip policy. Those are three options. Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay.
I mean, the goal again is really to protect the church, because things do happen. I give you an example. We had a anonymous group that was at one of our churches. Person left, they fell, had some fairly significant injuries. Nobody witnessed it. But that claim was, mid six figures. It's hard to defend when it's on church property. There's no indemnification or agreement that exists that insulates the church. There's no Tulip policy. And unfortunately, we see far too many of those types of situations. So the church ends up paying for a situation where they probably might not have even been liable, other than the fact that it was their property. But nobody's witnessing it. Nobody can refute the fact that it happened, and it happened where they said it happened. But we get a number of these types of things. So having that little bit of insulation actually goes a long way for churches.
So for something like a warming shelter, we might get as much as a 24-hour notice from the local FEMA folks that they need a warming shelter. That's a pretty short turnaround to try to get coverage. Is there something you could do kind of seasonally that says, look, we're heading into the coldest seasons of the month. We might have 1, 2, or 3 nights they asked us to be a warming shelter. Can we get coverage for that? It's not recurring necessarily, but you can't get it quickly enough to be responsive to the need.
Yeah, Camille, I think that's a great question. And a lot of this loss control stuff is under Jim's purview. But I would say, having a conversation with us at the beginning of the year, for example, if you know that typically during a year you may have zero or you may have a handful of situations like that, let's talk about it at the outset of the year, and we can, figure out the best way to address that as those situations come up, so we're not having a delay when you have a situation that where you have a 24-hour notification.
Thank you.
And Camille, we do get those requests where we need something immediately, and we do everything we can to try to get that process for you as well too. So,
Thank you.
Is the insurance? Oh, excuse me. Go ahead. I was going to say, is the insurance board the carrier, or is there another paper or insurance company? In other words, if you issue a policy, is it issued in the policy? Is it going to read insurance board, or does it carry a carrier's name?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the paper that you would get on the property side is STAR, STARR, and on the liability side, it's Lexington. And those are the companies that issue the coverage. However, Insurance Board, through our subsidiary United Church Insurance Company, essentially acts as reinsurer. Star and Lexington are Lexington's a division of AIG. They're two of the largest, companies providing insurance in the world. Both A paper, a financial size category of 15, which is the highest that you can get, $2 billion of surplus or more. They would be the paper that you get. We sit behind them and we reinsure. So for every property claim, the first $5 million of that is we pay out of our insurance company. And on the liability side, essentially the first $1 million of coverage. Above that, then we buy reinsurance through a number of different reinsurance partners. So our program is extremely solid. Again, we're operating mostly as a reinsurer. We're regulated by the Department of Insurance in Hawaii, where our captive is domiciled. But it's a great question. But the paper that you get is from two of the largest insurance companies in the country in the world, actually.
So they would be admitted surplus lines, non-surplus lines, or admitted carriers.
So they write, both of them write on a non-admitted basis. However, the reason for that is because our coverage is generally broader than the standard traditional market. I mean, we're providing coverage that you generally don't get from admitted carriers. So it provides us a little more flexibility to be able to offer broader terms and conditions. But they're among the largest carriers in the world. And even if for whatever reasons we couldn't pay the reinsurance on the backside of it, because the paper that you're getting has their name on it, they would be obligated to pay. But obviously, they make sure that we have the financial wherewithal to pay if in fact there is a claim. And we've had those relationships for the last 25. Star is new. Lexington used to do both sides, but Star is new for the last maybe 5 years. But we've had these relationships for the last 25 years.
Is that Gen Star or just Star?
Just Star, STARR.
There's a general Star too.
There is a Gen Star as well. Yep.
Back in many years ago, we wrote wind coverage in South Florida for 50 cents a hundred, and we could discount it down to 25 cents a hundred. And then along came Andrew, and it all went the other way.
and things changed a lot of things, no doubt. So
yes, it did. Absolutely.
Well, thank you
Great
all so
question.
very much for your time. If you would please send me all of that information.
Yes.
The information that we can gather that would be helpful for you and your presentation and all of the other things. I will make sure that that makes it to all the members of this task force, including a recording of today. To the rest of you, as soon as I get that, I will send out the recording and I'll send all that information out to you. We'll give it a couple of weeks and meet again and maybe have a conversation about our next steps. Does that make sense?
That's
Awesome.
great.
Super. Thank you all so very much. Again, we appreciate your time and all of your all the knowledge that you bring to this. Super helpful.
We appreciate you bringing the group together. Look forward to helping.
Thank you so much.
Thank
And
you.
John Davis, one of these days, I want to question you about hometown coming to your town.
Oh, okay.
I know you know what I'm talking about.
Yes,
All right.
yes.
Thank you all so very much. Have a blessed
Thank you,
day.
Valerie.
Okay.
All right.
Bye now.
Bye.